Hey guys, how's everyone doing? This is Sir Jedi Sentinel, and welcome back to Sentinel Reviews. Today, our look at countermeasures continues with the new Countermeasures Series 2, released in December of 2017, directed by Ken Bentley. The new Countermeasures Series 2 once again stars Simon Williams as Group Captain Ian Gilmore, Pamela Salem as Professor Rachel Jensen, Karen Gledhill as Dr. Allison Williams, and Hugh Ross as Sir Toby Kinsella. As always, I will be talking spoilers, so if you have not yet heard the new Countermeasure Series 2, then in the description box below is the link to Big Finish's website and the page where you can purchase it. Also, before we jump into the review proper, I am recovering from a cold right now, so occasionally I may break to cough. And I am not going to go through this video and try to edit all of those out. So, without any further ado, let's begin. So because this is the first of the jewel case box sets, as opposed to a box set of individual CDs, this is just what you're seeing here is what the entire case is. And really, I do think this is one of the first ones Big Finish did. Anyway, I'm going to cover all four stories at once rather than dedicating individual segments in the video to each story like I did. Kind of like how I did with, what was one I did recently? Missy Series 2 or Missy Series 3, something like that. So, real quick, let me give you the stories. I have the page open because, well, I memorized the stories' names, but I didn't memorize the authors. So, this time around, we have The Splintered Man by Roland Moore, The Ship of the Sleepwalkers by Christopher Hatherall, My Enemy's Enemy by Robert Kahn and Tom Salinsky, and Time of the Intelligence by Andy Frankham Allen. So, since I'm going to be covering the stories all at once, let me start with my broad thoughts. I really, really like this set. In fact, if you saw my review for the new Countermeasure Series 1, you would have seen that I am not the biggest fan of that set, and I do think it is the low point of the series. Something that I do still believe. However, listening to this set is immediately a massive improvement over Series 1 of the new Countermeasures. Still not as good as the original series, but this is definitely a highlight of the range. So the performances across all four stories are good from our leads. I know I say that a lot with my reviews of Countermeasures, but it's because it's true, the writing for all of them is good. The writers clearly understand these characters. Nothing ever feels out of character unless it's supposed to. Like a character is under mind control or they're being influenced by an outside force or something like that. And the right excuse me. And as I said, the cast obviously know these characters really well at this point. So, there's not a fault in their performances. Their chemistry together is always fantastic. I wish there was really more to say with their performances, but as it stands, there isn't. So let's sort of go into the stories. First off, The Splintered Man. This story sees the team in Barcelona and trying to find, well, there was a British scientist working on a project to end world hunger, but his partner destroyed their lab and they're trying to figure out what's going on. Well, spoilers, just to get right into the story. They were trying to cure world hunger by cloning. And what happened is that one of the scientists' cloned himself. And, the clone sees himself as an aberration and is going about trying to destroy the research and everything, and everyone tied to it. Oh god, I probably should not be doing this right now. And one of the interesting plot elements of The Splintered Man is that one of the If I do that again, I'm gonna stop the video. If I keep having these coughing fits so soon between each other. Anyway, one of these scientists, a man named Henry Cording, played by Dan Starkey, is a former flame of Rachel's. And I don't think the story does quite enough with it, but it does. How to say that? It does okay, but not enough. There we go. And it gives some great material for both Simon Williams and Pamela Salem. Like I said, countermeasures, even though nothing ever happens, nothing ever becomes of it, countermeasures, kind of like Remembrance of the Daleks, at least the Target novelization, likes to ship Ian and Rachel. And like I said, I do too. So here we have Ian being jealous of Rachel's former flame, and when this scientist ultimately dies, we see how devastated Rachel is. And they sort of have this scene, this scientist and Rachel, where they kind of make amends for their previous relationship. And it's all really well done. Other things, because they are in Barcelona, there is a sort of secret service. I don't remember what it is, but this woman, Mariana Lopez, is also trying to get this cloning research. And she sets herself up as an antagonist to the countermeasures team as well. And she's good. Like, whenever she gets involved, the story gets really tense. However, every time it does it too, the story leans so far into this trope. Well, I don't know what the name of it is, but I'm sure you've seen this in a mystery story. Oh, they're putting so much focus and emphasis and suspicion on this character that, of course, they can't be the one responsible. And that's what they do a lot with her. And yeah, that I kind of said, it's a trope that's really difficult to pull off well. I don't think I've seen it done good once yet. Not in this series, just in general. And there's not really much more to say about the Splintered Man. It's like I said, it's got some really good tension, and despite its name, the Splintered Man, and sort of the events leading up to the reveal, the story does a good job at making you guess what's going on until you get to the realization, oh, it was cloning. Oh, the villain is one of the scientist's clones. And I do applaud it for that. Although I do kind of feel the ending is out of place. And that's all I'm going to say on that. Even though I do put a spoiler warning in place and talk about spoilers, I don't want to give everything away, and it's something I've been working on. I feel like I've been saying that a lot in these past few videos. Anyway, next story, Ship of the Sleepwalkers. Another fantastic story. This story sees the team wake up on a cruise ship with no memory of how they got there. Well, it turns out they were drugged and placed there by MI5, trying to figure out what's going on this ship. And as they're trying to investigate and figure out what's going on, they find all sorts of strange occurrences. Like, all of the guests are heavily medicated. What was it they said? Like, medication is dispensed freely. Like, it's dispensed at the meals, it's dispensed at workout sessions, and so on. And all of these sort of messages play over the PA system. Like, oh, now that I put myself on the spot like that, I can't remember any of them. But basically, they're asking for passengers' compliance. In a weird way, this is kind of a countermeasures take on the Second Doctor story, the Macra Terror, where the powers at work are trying to make a compliant civilization that they can in turn exploit. No aliens here. It is all human, but it's really well done. Like I said, the tension is really good. Like, this is a proper edge of your seat thriller. What was I gonna go? There was something I was gonna say. Oh yeah, if you recall when I reviewed the new Countermeasure Series 1 with the story Troubled Waters, you remember I said that story didn't do a good job with the sound design of setting up that this is a submarine, and every so often the characters had to remind you that's a submarine. Well, in that regards, this story is heaps and bounds better, because it really does sell the setting of a cruise ship really well. And there is that sense of I almost said claustrophobia, but that would have been wrong. But there is this sense of isolation, because they're on a cruise ship in the middle of the ocean, surrounded by enemies. So they are essentially on their own, and as this story progresses, you really feel that. And once again, the villain is fantastic in this story, or at least the enforcer. So I'm not going to explain what the plot is, or at least what the motivations are, but we have two villains. We have a Russian scientist who is just very stereotypical, and he is kind of the weak link of this story. It's not enough to bring the story down, but compared to how great everything else is in this story, and you have this character who's just meh, he does drag it down a little bit. And then you have sort of the enforcer, who is this ex-CIA agent, who is an ex-CIA agent because, and he says, the free market pays better. And this guy is just a scuzzball. Like you want his comeuppance to happen. And when it does, it's so satisfying. But yeah, Ship of the Sleepwalkers is another fantastic story in the range. Like, listening to these stories again, I knew there was one story in the new Countermeasure Series 2 I liked, but I didn't remember enjoying myself as much as I did the first time I listened to it. And that brings us to the third story, My Enemy's Enemy. And again, going back to the new Countermeasure Series 1, if you recall, I said the new Countermeasures introduced a new recurring villain for this series, Lady Suzanne Clare, played by Carolyn Seymour. And in My Enemy's Enemy, she comes back. But did she come back to destroy countermeasures? Well, she claims that she is coming for sanctuary. She's turning herself in because someone more powerful than her wants her dead. So she wants the protection of the countermeasures team. Who is that? Well, it's another socialite, and that's really the easiest way to describe it, named August Fraser. Ooh, one thing I want to mention that I don't think I've done really well. I've talked about this in the past when I reviewed countermeasures. I talked about the team and when they have to divvy up the work and take on different tasks. Countermeasures' biggest problem, I feel, has been that the division of labor has not always been well done. Like, there is a character, essentially, who always seems to get screwed over. That doesn't really happen in series 2 here. I find the division of labor is really well done, really well handled. Anyway, with My Enemy's Enemy, Carolyn Seymour is once again just fantastic as Lady Clare. Equal parts funny, charismatic, and intimidating. The new villain they also introduced, August Fraser, is also really good. Like, he has this scene with Toby that's just so tense. Again, the tension is really good. And just the way he always seems to be 2 steps ahead. The one thing with this story is that it feels like it's trying to be a farce, but it's taking itself too seriously. So, there's an extended sequence where Toby tries to get dirt on August Fraser, and it involves him in if you listen to his voice, his performance, an extremely ludicrous disguise. Or as another example, there's a scene that doesn't really go anywhere, and the more I think about it, where Ian calls in a favor from someone who turns out to be an alien art critic. And that's all I'm going to say on that, too. Again, to avoid spoilers, but two, you really need to experience that scene. It's really enjoyable. Or even the ending, when it seems like both August Fraser and Lady Clare in their own ways have won. The team get the one up on them and are able to trap and imprison them. And the story ends with this scene between August Fraser and Lady Claire, that sort of explains what their relationship is. Like I said, with sequences like these peppered throughout the story, it feels like My Enemy's Enemy is trying to be a farce. And as such, it falls apart because it's taking itself way too seriously. Like, there's a few moments that get a chuckle, sure, certainly. But, the humor it's obviously going for is just falling flat because it's not letting itself go as big or have as much fun as it could. And I guess really that leads us to the finale story, The Time of the Intelligence. So if you haven't figured it out from the cover or the name of the story, this is a sequel to the Patrick Troughton story, The Web of Fear. Now, fun little story about that. In the making of feature at the end of the set, David Richardson actually talked about this. They were excuse me. They were planning something else entirely. Like, they had an entirely different finale story planned. But then David Richardson realized they were coming up on a big sort of Doctor Who fandom milestone, the 50th anniversary of The Web of Fear. And, given that the story had just been found and completed and released in some way, they wanted a way to commemorate the story. And David Richardson realized that in none of their ranges, like the main range or one of the spin-offs or what have you, they didn't really have anything planned. So they decided to do that celebration here in the new Countermeasure Series 2. And all the better for it, because Time of the Intelligence is really refreshing. Like, I think part of it is because, as I mentioned, countermeasures can kind of get samey. But part of it, too, is that, and, because a lot of it is, even though alien technology might be involved, they are still dealing with human threats. So now, the countermeasures team is facing an alien threat, which sort of revitalizes the series in a lot of ways. Again, although interestingly, this story seems to fall into that trap of, and Doctor Who has fallen into in the past, of setting up, attempting to be a mystery, while failing to realize that, they put what they're facing in the title. Like, it's called Time of the Intelligence. We know they're facing the Great Intelligence and the Yeti, but the team doesn't know that until, I think, the first third of the story. The team doesn't face the Yeti alone, though. Like, they do... Well, first of all, it's interesting because this story sort of retroactively says that Toby was in London during the events of the Web of Fear. He remembered the webs and them starting to spread, but he was one of the last people evacuated. Anyway, that brings me to another point that I started to get onto. The team isn't facing the intelligence alone. They do have an expert. One Professor Edwardtravers. Now, Edwardtravers was a character in both of the Great Intelligence stories in the Second Doctor era, in The Abominable Snowman and The Web of Fear, played by Jack Watling, who was the father of Deborah Watling, who played Victoria. And, yeah, I'm sorry, just the actor here, at least in my summation, is not doing a good job because, well, no, it's not that he's bad. He's trying too hard to do a Jack Watling impression. Like, you see the effort, and you see the acting more than you see the performance or the character. Like, I feel like if he let go a little bit and stopped trying so hard to do a Jack Watling impression and instead focused on playing the character of Edwardtravers, it would have come out a lot better. Interestingly enough, the actor playing Professor Travers is also playing the Great Intelligence, and his work there is really good. He emulates the classic series iteration of the Great Intelligence really well. there is one thing that feels kind of superfluous. So, at least in the Web of Fear, I can't speak for The Abominable Snowman because I haven't listened to it yet. I haven't heard the BBC Radio reconstruction. And, well, the animation isn't out yet. It's going to be at least right now, the final animation of A Missing Story, but they haven't released it yet. Not important, but in the Web of Fear, Professor Travers had a daughter named Anne, who was sort of his link to reality, so to speak. Professor Travers' mind was so warped fighting the Great Intelligence that he's kind of lost his grip on reality, and thus his daughter Anne is his link to reality. Now, this story makes a point of mentioning that Anne is no longer around. Like, she's left to do her own work and pursue her own goals. And in her place, Professor Travers has a nephew who's watching after him. And it feels really superfluous, if I'm being honest. Although it does create some interesting dynamics, because after the events of the Web of Fear, Professor Travers' mind is so destroyed that he starts seeing Allison as Anne. Like, he believes she's Anne. Excuse me. Ugh. And, so whenever he gets really energetic or excited, she has to pull him back and calm him down. And it's a really good performance from Karen Gledhill as well. I'm not going to mince words about this. The Time of the Intelligence is my favorite story in this set. There's, again, a great tension to it. The Yeti and the Intelligence are portrayed really well. That was something I was kind of worried about, because you had this Lovecraftian disembodied monstrosity, essentially, and his nigh indestructible threats. It was like, if you do this threat that only the Doctor could stop, but not have the Doctor, would that diminish the threat in any way? And thankfully, it doesn't. Time of the Intelligence is one of my favorite stories in this set. In fact, actually, I think if I was to rank the stories from my least favorite to my favorite, it would be the story order of this set. So The Splintered Man is my least favorite, then Ship of the Sleepwalkers, then My Enemy's Enemy, and finally Time of the Intelligence. But that's a really hard call because, except for Time of the Intelligence, which is the standout, all three stories in this, the other three stories in this set are really good. Like, they're about a hair width apart in my opinion. The new Countermeasure Series 2 is a huge improvement over its predecessor, the new Countermeasure Series 1. As I said, strong performances, great stories, good mood and atmosphere, really good sound design. I wasn't even bothered by the music in this set. Like, I kept forgetting to bring it up as I reviewed the previous entries, but one of the weaknesses of the Countermeasures range is its music, because a lot of times it's just kind of this play on the Countermeasures theme. Like, at the end of a scene or something, you'll hear this little sting, doo 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 doo, and it just got so boring as the series went on. I didn't really have that problem in this set. I don't really remember much of the music, but the fact that I didn't find it dull or repetitive or samey has to say something. This is one of the standouts of the range, and I really do recommend it. But those are just my thoughts on the new Countermeasure Series 2. Have you heard it yet? Start a conversation in the comments below. And join me next month when the new Countermeasures will come to a close. Now, Series 3 was released individually. It wasn't done as a box set, it was done as individual releases. I'm not going to be covering them all at once, but I will cover them throughout next month, the month of March. So join me next time when we will be looking at the first release of the new Countermeasure Series 3, The Hollow King. And remember to like, comment, subscribe, click the bell next to subscribe to get notifications when I upload, and in the description box below you'll find the link to my Twitter where you can follow me and get updates on the channel. This is Sir Jedi Sentinel, and I'll see you guys next time.